So I'm talking a lot about affect regulation. I want to show you a book here. It's called Affect Regulation Theory by Daniel Hill. A lot of what I'm saying is based on Daniel Hill's work, and Daniel Hill's work is based on the work of my favorite developmental neuropsychologist, Alan Shore. Yes, I do have a favorite developmental neuropsychologist, Alan Shore. His work is amazing, but it is very hard to read, very, very dense. Daniel Hill took about probably 1,200 pages and distilled them down into about 230 pages that are much more readable. Affect regulation is really, that's the clinical term for what we're referring to when we talk about getting grounded. Like a grounding tool is a tool to regulate our affect. Affect is the felt state of the body. It is something that exists 24/7, even while we are asleep. We have an affective state that is going on. Like it says here on this slide, it is the constant backdrop of all cognitive processing, coloring every perception of all incoming data about self, others, and the world. So what that means is that the way you interpret what you see, what you hear, what you smell, taste, and touch, the way you interpret the incoming data is based in large part on your affective state in your body. I was working with a couple this morning. They relayed to me a story about having to, something around the house broke and it was not going to be a fun job to fix it. How the husband, when the wife told him that this thing was broken, he had a not so good reaction. There are other days and other times when he might have had a fine reaction. But part of the reason that he had such a bad reaction was it was their first day to cut themselves off from carbs and Diet Coke and coffee. So what affect state was he in at 2:00 in the afternoon when he just realized he was going to have to, replace the sewer, the pump for the septic system? Not a fun job anyway, but even worse when you're hungry and in withdrawal from caffeine. Our affect state affects the incoming data. Now, think about that as it would apply to a trauma trigger. So once I get triggered and now I'm in the affective state connected to the trigger, I continue to interpret the incoming data through that state. So now the facial expressions of my partner and the words they're saying and the tone of their voice and the fact that they're running 3 minutes late and all of that, I'm not interpreting it from a whole brain online regulated integrated state. I'm interpreting it based on now this dysregulated affect state. Now, another thing to understand about this is the second bullet point here. Each person is a unitary self made up of a set of self states, versions of us that are context dependent products of the affective regulation system and the 5 cognitive subsystems. I know that's getting really heady. I warned you it was coming, and I'm going to break it down and we're going to understand it better than just that sentence. But here's what that's basically saying. I've got one self state for like right now doing a webinar. Okay. This is a different self state than when I'm working with a couple. I'm going to present slightly differently. I'm going to respond, think slightly differently because it's context dependent. Both of these, the webinar self state and the working with a couple self state, are very different than when I walk in the house at night and I have to be in husband or dad self state. My wife, very supportive of what I do and very supportive of the self state I'm in right now, but this is not who she wants to be married to. However, optimal functioning means that my self states are unified enough that I'm pretty much still the same guy in the different contexts. I might have different aspects of my personality and my skill sets and all that are on the forefront in these different self states, and I can flexibly move between them as needed, but they're overall unified and working together on the whole of what I've got going on in my life. That's a unified, integrated set of self states.